Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going deep into the world of chlorine gas
Specifically.
and how to handle it safely.
Yeah.
We've got all your research here, and let's just say it gets pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
You've been really digging into this stuff.
It's fascinating.
I mean, did you know that some of the byproducts of neutralizing chlorine gas are things you probably have like right in your kitchen right now?
That's right. We're talking about things that you use every day, like salt.
Salt?
And bleach.
Oh, wow.
But before we get to the solutions, we need to understand the problem.
Okay.
And that starts with why chlorine gas is such a serious concern.
So let's talk worst case scenarios then. Your research mentioned some pretty scary stuff.
Absolutely. Chlorine gas is highly toxic.
Go.
In high concentrations, it can cause severe respiratory damage.
Oh, wow.
Eye irritation.
Yeah.
In the worst cases, exposure can even be fatal.
Really?
You might encounter diluted chlorine gas in everyday settings like swimming pools. But in industrial settings, the concentrations are far higher.
Oh, so it's much more...
making the risks much more significant.
So it sounds like this isn't something to mess around with.
No.
And that's where chlorine gas scrubbers come in, right, to help neutralize the danger.
Scrubbers are essential for safety and compliance in any industrial setting where chlorine gas is present.
Got it. So how do these scrubbers actually work?
Okay.
What's the science behind neutralizing this chlorine gas?
Well, it involves a chemical reaction using alkaline substances. These substances react with the chlorine and convert it into less harmful byproducts.
Okay, so similar to how baking soda neutralizes an acidic stomach.
Yes.
Like turning something harsh into something more benign.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
One of the most common methods is wet scrubbing with sodium hydroxide.
Sodium hydroxide, that sounds intense.
It is.
Is that something I should be worried about having in my house?
Well, sodium hydroxide is a strong alkali, yes.
Okay.
But it's used safely in controlled settings.
Yeah.
When it reacts with chlorine gas, it creates sodium chloride, which is just table salt, and sodium hypochlorite, which is a common ingredient in bleach.
So the same bleach I might use in my house.
Yes, but in a much more controlled and industrial setting.
Okay, so wet scrubbing is basically turning dangerous chlorine gas into things I use all the time.
That's right.
That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
Is this the most common method?
It's very common,
Okay.
especially for industrial applications that have consistent chlorine gas emissions. But another method called dual alkali scrubbing uses both sodium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide, also known as lime, to enhance the neutralization process.
Why the need for two alkalis?
Right.
Is it like a 1-2 punch to knock out the chlorine?
It's more about creating a more robust solution for complex emissions.
Got it.
Imagine a facility dealing with not only chlorine gas, but also other acidic gases.
Right.
The dual alkali system is particularly good at capturing multiple contaminants simultaneously.
So if a facility is dealing with a mixture of different gases, this dual alkali method might be the way to go.
Exactly. It offers a wider safety net for more complex situations, but it's important to remember that not every industrial process is the same.
Right.
That's why we often see custom chlorine gas scrubber systems.
So a tailored suit for each chlorine problem.
Exactly. These custom systems can account for varying chlorine gas concentrations, airflow, and specific industry requirements.
Right.
One example of this is the use of multi-stage scrubbers.
Okay, multi-stage scrubbers. That sounds complex.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through how those work?
Imagine a series of chambers, each designed to capture a portion of the chlorine gas. The first stage might remove the bulk of the gas, while the secondary stages use different methods to essentially polish off any remaining traces. Think of it like a filter system getting finer and finer with each stage.
So for really high chlorine concentrations, this multi-stage approach offers like extra security.
Exactly. Industries like chemical manufacturing, where safety is paramount,
often
rely on these heavy-duty systems to ensure even the tiniest amounts of chlorine gas are neutralized.
That's impressive. But we've been talking a lot about wet scrubbing.
Yeah.
Are there ever situations where a dry method might be preferred?
You're right, there are.
Okay.
Sometimes using water-based systems simply isn't practical. Maybe water is scarce, or there are space limitations. That's where dry scrubbing technologies come in. Dry scrubbers use solid alkaline materials, like sodium bicarbonate, which is just baking soda.
Baking soda for chlorine gas. That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
How effective is it compared to the wet methods?
Well, instead of dissolving the chlorine in a liquid, these materials absorb and neutralize it.
So it's more about trapping the chlorine than breaking it down chemically?
In a way, yes. The sodium bicarbonate, for example, undergoes a chemical reaction with the chlorine gas, turning it into harmless compounds.
Got it.
Dry scrubbers are particularly useful in locations with limited water access, like desert regions, or in facilities with limited space for a large, wet scrubbing system.
This is all starting to make sense.
Yeah.
We've got our two main methods, wet and dry.
Right.
And then we can customize them with things like multi-stage systems depending on the specific needs.
Yeah.
It's like building blocks for a chlorine gas solution.
Yeah.
But in your research, you also mentioned package scrubber systems.
Yeah.
What are those all about?
Package scrubber systems are pre-assembled units, kind of like all-in-one solutions.
Okay.
They're perfect for smaller installations or for facilities that need to be prepared for emergencies.
So if a smaller business needs a scrubber or a facility needs to be ready for like a potential chlorine gas leak, these package systems are a good option.
Absolutely. They come with everything you need.
Okay.
Fans, control panels, chemical reservoirs.
Wow.
All ready to go.
So it's kind of like plug-and-play chlorine safety.
Yes. Think of it that way. They can be up and running in a short amount of time.
That's super convenient. But with all this talk of complex systems, it makes me wonder, how do we ensure these scrubbers are always working at their best?
That's where continuous monitoring and automation come into play.
Okay.
Advanced scrubber systems have real-time monitoring to track chlorine gas levels and can actually adjust scrubbing efficiency on the fly.
So it's like having a smart system that's constantly checking itself and making adjustments?
Exactly. They can even optimize chemical dosing, making sure the scrubber is always operating at peak efficiency.
Okay.
This level of precision is especially important in high-risk environments where even a small mistake could have serious consequences.
This is all incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the basics of neutralizing chlorine gas to these high-tech self-adjusting systems.
Right.
But there's one thing I keep thinking about: emergency preparedness.
Yeah.
What happens when something goes wrong and there's a chlorine gas leak?
That's a crucial question, and that's what we'll dive into next. Welcome back.
So before we jumped into emergency preparedness, you were really curious about what happens when things go wrong.
Right.
And there's a chlorine gas leak.
In facilities that store or transport large amounts of chlorine, you often find emergency scrubbers.
Okay.
They're specifically designed for sudden, high-volume releases of chlorine gas.
So these are different from the scrubbers that we were talking about earlier.
That's right. They act as a rapid response system.
Okay.
Think of it like this.
Okay.
A regular scrubber is like your everyday air purifier.
Okay.
Quietly working in the background. An emergency scrubber is more like the fire sprinkler system, lying dormant until a crisis hits.
So how do they know when to activate?
Right.
It's not like they have eyes.
They actually work in tandem with a gas detection system.
Okay.
If the sensors detect a spike in chlorine levels, boom, the emergency scrubber kicks in.
So it's like a chlorine gas fire alarm. It also puts out the fire.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
They need to neutralize massive amounts of gas very quickly before it can spread.
Right.
You'd find these in places like water treatment plants or chemical storage facilities. Anywhere a chlorine gas leak could have catastrophic consequences.
That makes sense. But what about situations where a facility doesn't have one of these permanent emergency scrubbers installed?
Yeah.
Or maybe they need something more mobile, something they can take, to different locations.
You're thinking about mobile scrubbing units?
Yeah.
These are a fantastic option for situations where a permanent system isn't feasible or for responding to emergencies that happen out in the field.
So it's like a chlorine gas SWAT team that can be dispatched anywhere.
I like that analogy. They can be deployed rapidly to the scene of an accident, a chemical spill, or even in some cases an intentional attack involving chlorine gas.
Wow.
They're designed to be highly mobile and capable of handling significant chlorine gas loads.
So we've got emergency scrubbers for stationary locations and mobile units for on-the-go situations.
Right.
Is there anything else that's crucial when it comes to emergency preparedness?
Definitely. It's not just about neutralizing the gas. It's also about containment.
Okay.
An effective emergency response plan needs to incorporate containment measures, such as ventilation systems, specialized fans, and even temporary barriers.
So the idea is to prevent the chlorine gas from spreading while the scrubber is doing its job.
Precisely. You want to create a controlled environment,
Okay.
directing the gas towards the scrubber and preventing it from reaching populated areas or sensitive ecosystems. Think of it as creating a funnel to guide the gas where you want it to go.
That makes sense, but all of this really highlights the fact that we need clear safety protocols and regulations. I mean, knowing what we now know about the potential dangers, how do we make sure chlorine gas is being handled responsibly across all these different industries?
That's a critical question, and it's one that regulatory agencies around the world are constantly working to address. We have strict guidelines for storing, transporting, and using chlorine gas. But these regulations are constantly being updated as we learn more about the risks and how to mitigate them.
So it's not just about having the right technology, but also about having the right rules in place to make sure that technology is being used safely.
That's right. It almost sounds like we're in this constant race to stay ahead of the potential dangers.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. It's like an ongoing game of chess. Trying to anticipate all the possible moves and counter moves. That's why research and development are so crucial. We need to constantly be innovating, searching for better ways to handle chlorine gas safely and effectively.
So what are some of the areas where research is focusing right now?
Well, one area is the development of even more efficient and effective scrubber technologies. Scientists and engineers are always trying to make these systems better at capturing and neutralizing chlorine gas.
Can you give me an example? Like, what kind of innovations are they working on?
One exciting area is bioscrubbers. These systems use microorganisms, like bacteria or fungi, to break down and neutralize chlorine gas.
Wow. So it's like using nature's own cleaning crew to handle this hazardous chemical.
Exactly. Bioscrubbers offer a more sustainable and environmentally friendly approach compared to traditional methods that rely on harsh chemicals.
That sounds incredible. Are there any downsides to using these bioscrubbers?
Well, one challenge is ensuring the right conditions for these microorganisms to thrive. They're a bit like Goldilocks, needing everything to be just right in terms of temperature, pH, and nutrient availability.
So there are some technical hurdles to overcome before bioscrubbers become widespread.
That's right, but the potential benefits are enormous. Imagine a future where we can harness the power of nature to safely manage chlorine gas.
Wow.
It's a very exciting prospect.
I agree. It's amazing to think about how science and technology are constantly evolving to meet these challenges. But it's not all about futuristic solutions, right? What about practical things people can do today to stay informed and prepared? I mean, for those of us who might work with chlorine gas or live near facilities that use it.
That's a great point. Knowledge is power. And the more we understand about chlorine gas and its risks, the better prepared we'll be.
So what are some practical steps people can take?
First and foremost, familiarize yourself with the safety procedures and emergency plans in place at your workplace or in your community.
So knowing what to do if an alarm goes off?
Yes.
Where the evacuation routes are, that sort of thing?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If something isn't clear or you feel like you need more information, reach out to your safety manager or local authorities. They're there to help.
It's always better to be safe than sorry. What else can people do to stay informed?
Stay informed about any potential hazards in your area. Many communities have online resources or notification systems that provide information about chemical facilities and potential risks.
So things like signing up for alerts? Or checking local websites for updates?
Exactly. And if you live near a facility that uses chlorine gas, consider attending a community meeting or workshop to learn more about their safety protocols and emergency response plans.
That was a good idea.
It's a great way to get firsthand information and have your questions answered.
It sounds like being proactive and engaged is key. We can't just assume that someone else is taking care of everything. We all have a role to play in keeping ourselves and our community safe.
I couldn't agree more. It's about taking ownership and being informed.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
Good.
We've covered so much ground, from the intricate science behind chlorine gas neutralization to the real-world implications of using this powerful chemical. It's clear that chlorine gas is here to stay.
It is.
But so is the need to manage it responsibly.
Absolutely. It's a balancing act, and one that requires continuous learning and adaptation.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up,
I
want to dive a bit deeper into the actual design and construction of these scrubber systems.
Okay.
What are some of the engineering challenges involved in building these things?
That's a fascinating question. It really is a remarkable blend of chemistry, physics, and engineering. Remember we talked about how corrosive chlorine gas is?
Yeah, corrosion resistance was one of the key features we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
It sounds like building a scrubber is a bit like building a spaceship.
Yeah.
It needs to be able to withstand some pretty extreme conditions.
That's a great analogy. And just like a spaceship, there's no room for error when you're dealing with hazardous substances.
Right.
So engineers have to be incredibly meticulous when selecting materials for the vessel, the piping, and all the internal components.
So it's not just about throwing any old metal tank together and hoping for the best.
Definitely not. We're talking specialized alloys, plastics, and coatings, all carefully chosen to resist the corrosive effects of chlorine gas over long periods.
So what are some of the specific materials they use?
One common material is fiberglass reinforced plastic, also known as FRP.
Yeah.
It's strong, lightweight, and highly resistant to corrosion.
Got it.
Another option is PTFE, or polytetrafluoroethylene, which is a high-performance plastic known for its exceptional chemical resistance.
Those sound like some seriously tough materials.
They are.
But even with these high-tech materials, I imagine there's still a lot of maintenance involved in keeping these systems running smoothly.
There is regular maintenance involved, yes. But modern scrubber systems are designed to be relatively low maintenance. Remember those automation and safety controls we talked about earlier?
Yes, the ones that are constantly monitoring and adjusting the system.
Right, the ones that are constantly taking the scrubber's pulse, so to speak.
Exactly.
Those systems play a huge role in reducing the need for manual intervention. They can detect potential issues early on and alert operators before they turn into major problems.
So it's like having a built-in mechanic for your scrubber, always keeping an eye on things, making sure everything's running smoothly.
Precisely. And many scrubber systems also have self-cleaning mechanisms that help prevent buildup and ensure optimal performance. Think of them like the self-cleaning ovens of the scrubber world.
It sounds like these systems are designed with both efficiency and ease of use in mind.
They are. The goal is to make them as user-friendly as possible while maintaining those high levels of safety and reliability.
This all makes me think about the long-term implications of using chlorine gas in various industries.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential benefits and challenges we might face in the future?
That's a great question to ponder as we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive. And that's exactly where we'll pick up when we return.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about all the engineering that goes into these scrubber systems, and we were starting to think about the bigger picture of chlorine gas in the future.
Yeah, the long-term implications, both the benefits and the challenges.
It seems like a tightrope walk.
It is.
On the one hand, chlorine gas is essential.
Absolutely. There's so many things. Yeah, from water treatment to manufacturing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as technology advances, we'll probably find even more innovative ways to use chlorine gas.
I think that's very likely.
So it's not going anywhere.
No.
And these industries that rely on it are probably going to keep growing.
Right.
But then on the other hand, we can't ignore the risks.
We can't.
The health hazards, the environmental concerns.
Yeah. All have to be considered.
It seems like research and development is going to be super important going forward.
Absolutely. We need to find ways to make chlorine gas safer and minimize its impact.
And it's not just scientists and engineers, right?
No, it's not.
It's policymakers, industry leaders, even everyday citizens.
Right. Everybody's involved in this.
So knowing all this, knowing the dangers and all the complexities, how do we ensure that it's being used safely for all these essential applications while minimizing the risks?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, what's the answer?
I don't think there's a simple answer.
Yeah.
It's going to take collaboration, a willingness to adapt, and a commitment to finding solutions that work for everyone.
So it sounds like we're all in this together.
We are.
Scientists, engineers, policymakers, everyday people.
Yep.
We all have a stake in making sure that chlorine gas is handled responsibly.
I think that's a great takeaway from our deep dive today.
It's not just the technical stuff.
Yeah.
It's about the bigger picture.
Yes.
You've given me, and I'm sure all our listeners, a lot to think about. It's been a really incredible journey exploring this world of chlorine gas scrubber solutions.
Yeah. It's a fascinating topic.
There's a lot more to it.
More than meets the eye.
Than meets the eye, exactly. I want to thank you for sharing all your expertise.
Well, thank you for having me.
With me and with all of our listeners today, it's been a fascinating deep dive.
It has been.
And to our listeners, thank you all for joining us for this deep dive into the world of chlorine gas scrubber solutions. And remember, learning doesn't stop here.
That's right.
Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the world of knowledge.
Absolutely.